My wife just announced at our anniversary dinner that her ex-husband would always have access to her through the kids, and I should deal with it or leave. The entire table went dead silent. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Okay, good luck." Then I stood up and walked out. Let me back up a bit. We were at Outback Steakhouse celebrating our third wedding anniversary. Nothing fancy, but it's where we had our first date, so it felt right. My parents were there, her sister, and two of our closest couple friends. Everyone was in good spirits, sharing stories and laughing over blooming onions and steaks. I should mention that my wife has two kids from her previous marriage, 8 and 10 years old. Great kids, and I've always treated them like my own. Their biological father lives about 20 minutes away, and we've maintained what I thought was a reasonable co-parenting arrangement. Pickup times, school events, holidays. Pretty standard stuff. But lately, things have been different. Phone calls at odd hours. Unexpected schedule changes that always seemed to favor his convenience over ours. Family decisions that somehow required his input first. I'd started noticing patterns, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. So there we were, everyone raising their glasses for a toast to our marriage, when she decided to drop this bomb. Right in the middle of my dad's speech about how proud he was to have her as a daughter-in-law. She just interrupted him and said, "I need everyone to understand something. My ex-husband will always have access to me through the kids. That's just how it is. If anyone has a problem with that, including my current husband, they can leave." The silence was deafening. My dad literally froze mid-sentence with his glass in the air. Her sister's mouth fell open. Our friends started staring at their plates like they contained the secrets of the universe. I felt every eye at the table turn to me, waiting to see how I'd react. Would I get angry? Would I cause a scene? Would I try to explain away what she just said? Instead, I calmly set down my napkin, looked directly at her, and said, "Okay, good luck." I stood up, pulled out my wallet, threw down enough cash to cover the entire meal plus tip, and headed for the door. She called after me, but I didn't turn around. I could hear chairs scraping as people shifted uncomfortably, someone saying my name, but I just kept walking. By the time I reached my truck, my phone was already buzzing with calls and texts. The drive home was interesting. Not angry, not hurt, just crystal clear about what had just happened. My wife had publicly announced that another man would always have priority access to her, and anyone who didn't like it could leave. Well, she got her wish. I spent that evening in my garage, organizing tools and thinking. 3 years of marriage, and she chose our anniversary dinner, in front of both our families, to draw a line in the sand. Not in private where we could discuss it. Not in counseling where we could work through whatever was bothering her. At our anniversary dinner, for everyone to hear. By 10 o'clock, I'd made my decision. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Some statements, once made publicly, can't be taken back. She'd told an entire table of people that her ex-husband's access to her was non-negotiable, and that I could leave if I didn't like it. So I was going to leave, and I was going to make sure everyone remembered exactly whose choice that was. She came home around midnight, probably expecting to find me drunk or angry or ready to beg for forgiveness. Instead, she found me at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a manila folder. "We need to talk," she said, trying to sound authoritative. "No, we really don't," I replied, sliding the folder across the table. "These are divorce papers. I'll be filing them first thing Monday morning." Her face went white. "You can't be serious." Over something I said when I was emotional. Emotional? I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "You made a calculated announcement to our families about your priorities. That wasn't emotion. That was a declaration." She sat down hard in the chair across from me. "I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to make sure everyone understood that the kids come first. The kids weren't the issue, and you know it." I opened the folder and showed her the first page. "See, the thing is, I've been documenting some interesting patterns over the past 6 months." Her eyes widened as she saw the printed emails, text screenshots, and calendar entries I'd been quietly collecting. Every late-night phone call with her ex about emergency schedule changes. Every family decision that somehow required his approval first. Every time she'd canceled our plans because he needed something. "You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." I flipped to another page. Like this text thread from 2 weeks ago where you discussed our vacation plans with him before mentioning them to me. Or this email where you asked his opinion on what car we should buy. She tried to grab the papers, but I pulled them back. Or my personal favorite, last month when you asked him if it was okay for us to have dinner with my parents on a Sunday because it was his weekend with the kids, even though they were staying at our house anyway. I was just being considerate to him. You were being considerate to him, at the expense of your actual husband. I closed the folder and leaned back. Last night wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was you finally saying out loud what's been true for months. He has more say in our marriage than I do. She started crying then, but I'd seen this performance before. The tears that came whenever she got caught doing something she couldn't explain away. This is ridiculous. I'm not having an affair. We're just co-parenting. Did I say anything about an affair? I stood up and poured myself another cup of coffee. Although it's interesting that your mind went there first. What's that supposed to mean? It means you've been married to 2 men for the past year, and I'm tired of being the second choice. I sat back down and looked at her directly. Tell me something. When you need to make a decision about our life, whose opinion do you ask for first? She opened her mouth, then closed it. When something important happens, who's the first person you call? Silence. When you're planning something that affects our household, who do you check with before telling me? More silence. See, that's the problem. I already know the answers to those questions. And apparently, so does everyone else now, thanks to your announcement last night. She wiped her eyes and tried a different approach. The kids need stability. They need to see that their parents can work together. The kids need to see what a healthy marriage looks like. They need to understand boundaries and respect. What they've been seeing is their stepfather being treated like a tenant in his own house. I stood up again. But that ends now. You're throwing away 3 years of marriage over this? I'm not throwing away anything. You threw it away last night when you publicly announced your priorities. I'm just acknowledging reality. I picked up my keys from the counter. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. You can explain to the kids why Daddy moved out right after Mommy told everyone that their real father comes first. She grabbed my arm. Please don't do this. We can work through this. I'll change. I gently removed her hand. You told a table full of people that anyone who had a problem with your arrangement could leave. I don't have a problem with it anymore, because I'm leaving, just like you suggested. The drive to the hotel was peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't wondering what crisis would require her ex-husband's input into our lives. I wasn't questioning whether I was being unreasonable for wanting to be the primary voice in my own marriage. By morning, I'd already called the attorney. Some decisions are complicated. This one wasn't. She'd drawn the line, chosen her side, and announced it publicly. Now she could live with the consequences. Monday morning, I was sitting in my attorney's office by 8 a.m. sharp. I'd worked with him before on some business contracts, so he knew I wasn't the type to make impulsive decisions. So let me get this straight, he said, reviewing my documentation. She made this statement publicly, in front of witnesses, at your anniversary dinner? Word for word. My dad heard it. Her sister heard it. For other people at that table can verify exactly what she said. He leaned back in his chair, whistling low. That's either the most honest thing she's ever said, or the stupidest. Either way, it's going to make this divorce very straightforward. How so? Well, she essentially admitted that she prioritizes her relationship with her ex-husband over her relationship with you. In front of witnesses, that's going to factor heavily into any discussions about marital assets, especially if we can prove a pattern of behavior. I slid my folder across his desk. I've been documenting that pattern for 6 months. He spent the next 20 minutes reviewing everything. Phone records showing daily calls with her ex that lasted longer than our conversations. Email threads where she discussed our financial decisions with him first. Calendar entries showing she'd canceled our plans multiple times to accommodate his schedule changes. This is thorough work, he said finally. You've basically documented that she's been conducting a secondary marriage with her ex-husband while legally married to you. That's exactly what it felt like. Here's what we're going to do. We'll file on grounds of irreconcilable differences, but we'll use this documentation to argue for a favorable asset division. The fact that she publicly stated her ex-husband has priority access to her demonstrates that the marriage broke down due to her unwillingness to maintain appropriate boundaries. My phone buzzed with another call from her. I'd ignored about 15 since yesterday. She's been calling nonstop since I left the house Sunday night. Don't answer. Let her panic a bit. She's probably just now realizing that actions have consequences. He started organizing the paperwork. Now, let's talk about what you want out of this. I want out clean. I don't want her house, I don't want alimony. I just want my stuff and my freedom. That's very reasonable. But let's think strategically. You've been contributing to household expenses, utilities, groceries for her kids who aren't legally yours. You've been essentially subsidizing her co-parenting arrangement. I hadn't thought about it that way. Well, think about it now. For 3 years, you've been financially supporting a household where another man had decision-making authority. That's going to factor into our negotiations. He made some notes. What about the kids? I care about them, but they're not mine legally. And honestly, after what happened, I think a clean break is better for everyone. Smart. Getting involved in custody disputes with kids who aren't yours legally is a nightmare. He closed my file. I'll have papers ready by Wednesday. We'll serve her at work. Keep it professional. She works at the medical office downtown. Perfect. Public, but not embarrassing. Now, one more thing. Don't engage with her directly. If she wants to communicate, it goes through me. And definitely don't let her manipulate you into any meetings to work things out. Not planning on it. Good. Because here's what's going to happen next. First, she's going to try anger. She'll call you selfish, unreasonable, childish. When that doesn't work, she'll try bargaining. Promise to change, go to counseling, cut contact with the ex. When that fails, she'll bring in reinforcements. Her family, your family, mutual friends. They'll all tell you you're overreacting. I nodded. Sounds about right. Don't fall for any of it. She made her choice publicly, in front of witnesses, on your anniversary. That wasn't a mistake or poor judgment. That was her telling everyone where you stand in her priorities. By the time I left his office, I felt like I had a clear plan. No drama, no back and forth, no attempts to negotiate with someone who'd already told me I was second choice in my own marriage. My phone rang again. This time it was my dad. Son, I've been thinking about what happened Sunday night. Yeah, I owe you an apology. I should have said something right then and there. What she did was completely out of line. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that. Your mother and I talked about it all weekend. We can't believe she thought that was appropriate to say, especially at your anniversary dinner. Well, at least I know where I stood. What are you going to do? I filed for divorce this morning. There was a long pause. Good. I hate to say it, but good. No man should have to compete with an ex-husband for his wife's attention. When I hung up, I realized something had shifted. The people who mattered most could see exactly what had happened. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't overreacting, and I wasn't throwing away a good marriage. I was ending a bad one that I'd been too polite to acknowledge. By Wednesday, word was spreading fast. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the divorce papers were served at her workplace. Friends, family, even some co-workers had heard about what happened at the anniversary dinner. The first call was from my buddy who'd been at the table Sunday night. Dude, I have to ask, are you really divorcing her over what she said? I'm divorcing her because of what she said, what she meant, and what she's been doing for months. That dinner was just the grand finale. What do you mean? So I told him about the phone calls, the decision-making hierarchy, the way I'd become a financial contributor but not an actual partner in my own marriage. Holy crap, man. I had no idea it was that bad. Neither did I, until I started paying attention. I was organizing my tools in the garage, keeping my hands busy while I talked. Tell me something. In your marriage, who decides what you guys are doing for vacation? Well, we discuss it together, but ultimately it's between me and my wife. Right? Not between your wife and her ex-boyfriend from college. That would be insane. Exactly. But somehow I was supposed to think it was normal that she ran our family decisions past another man first. The next call was from her sister, which I'd been expecting. I think you're making a huge mistake, she said without even saying hello. Your sister made the mistake. I'm just responding to it. She's devastated. She didn't mean what she said the way it sounded. She meant exactly what she said. The only thing she's devastated about is that someone finally called her out on it. I set down my wrench and gave her my full attention. Let me ask you something. How many times has she called you asking for advice about her marriage? What does that have to? How many times? Silence. Now how many times has she called asking for advice about dealing with her ex-husband? More silence. That's what I thought. She talks to everyone about her problems with him, but never about problems with me. Because I wasn't the relationship she was working on. That's not fair. What's not fair is spending 3 years married to someone who was emotionally invested in managing another relationship. I walked back into the house and grabbed a beer from the fridge. What's not fair is finding out that your spouse considers another man's needs before yours. What's not fair is announcing that at your anniversary dinner. She wants to talk to you. She can talk to my attorney. That evening, my parents came by the hotel to check on me. My mom brought homemade lasagna, which told me everything I needed to know about whose side they were on. We feel terrible about what happened, she said, setting up plates on the small hotel table. It's not your fault, Mom. No, but we should have seen it earlier. My dad sat down heavily. Looking back, there were signs. The way she'd always check her phone during family dinners. How she'd step away to take calls from him during our visits. I thought I was being paranoid. You were being polite. Too polite. Mom handed me a fork. A marriage is supposed to be a partnership between two people, not three. That's exactly what it felt like. Like I was the third wheel in my own relationship. Dad shook his head. When she said that Sunday night, about him always having access to her, I wanted to speak up right then. But I figured it wasn't my place. It wasn't your place to fix my marriage, Dad. But it also wasn't her place to announce her priorities like that. Have you heard from her? She's been calling nonstop. Texting, emailing. Even had one of her friends try to reach out. My attorney told me not to engage. Smart advice. The thing is, I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done. You can't unknow what you know, and you can't unhear what you've heard. I took a bite of the lasagna. She told everyone at that table that another man would always have priority access to her. That's not something you say by accident. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, honey. No one should have to compete for their spouse's attention. The final call that day came from an unexpected source. One of the other dads from the kids' school, someone I'd talked to at pickup and drop-off over the years. Hey, I heard about what happened. I wanted to reach out because, honestly, some of us have been talking. Talking about what? About how weird the dynamic was between your wife and her ex. We've all seen it at school events, sports games. The way they'd huddle together making decisions while you stood off to the side. I sat down on the hotel bed. Other people noticed that. Man, it was obvious to everyone except maybe you. They acted like co-parents who happened to be married to other people, not like exes with appropriate boundaries. Why didn't anyone say anything? What were we supposed to say? Hey, your wife acts more married to her ex than to you. That's not a conversation you can have. But apparently, it was a conversation they could have with each other. Because over the next hour, he told me about discussions other parents had about the uncomfortable dynamic they'd witnessed. School events where she and her ex made decisions together while their current spouses watched from the sidelines. Sports games where they sat together while I sat with other families. The consensus was that it was weird, but we figured you were okay with it since you never said anything. I thought I was being supportive. You were being a doormat. There's a difference. By the time I hung up, I realized that what happened Sunday night wasn't just between me and her. It was validation of what other people had been seeing for months. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't jealous, and I wasn't overreacting. I was finally reacting appropriately to an inappropriate situation that everyone else had already noticed. Thursday morning, she was waiting in the hotel parking lot when I came out to go to work. 3 days of ignored calls and texts, and now she was ambushing me in person. We need to talk, she said, getting out of her car. No, we don't. Talk to my attorney. Please, just 5 minutes. I can explain everything. I kept walking toward my truck. You already explained everything Sunday night. Very clearly, in front of witnesses. I was stressed about the dinner, about everyone being there. I said something stupid. I stopped and turned around. You said something honest. That's not the same thing. It came out wrong. You know I didn't mean it like that. Actually, I think you meant it exactly like that. I think for once in 3 years, you told the truth about your priorities. I opened my truck door, and now you're dealing with the consequences. She started crying then, the full production. Please don't throw away our marriage over this. I love you. No, you don't. You love having me around to pay bills and provide stability while you maintain your real relationship with your ex. I got in the truck. Find another roommate. Friday brought a new strategy. Her mother called my office. I raised her better than this, she said after my secretary put her through. What she said was completely inappropriate. I appreciate you calling to say that, but divorcing her seems extreme. She's learned her lesson. Has she? Because as of yesterday morning, she was still trying to convince me that what she said wasn't what she meant. She's scared. She realizes she made a terrible mistake. The mistake wasn't what she said. The mistake was how she's been conducting our marriage for the past year. I leaned back in my chair. Can I ask you something? How often does she call you to complain about me? I don't understand. How often does she call upset about something I did or didn't do? There was a pause. Not very often. Now how often does she call upset about something involving her ex-husband? Longer pause. That's what I thought. She's not upset about losing me. She's upset about losing the financial security I provided while she worked out her complicated feelings about another man. Saturday, she tried bringing reinforcements. Two of our mutual friends showed up at the hotel, clearly sent on a mission. She wants you to know she's willing to go to counseling, one of them said. She wants you to know she'll cut off all unnecessary contact with her ex, said the other. Tell her I said thanks, but no thanks. Come on, man. Don't you think you're being a little harsh? I invited them in and made coffee. Then I showed them the same documentation I'd shown my attorney. 6 months of evidence showing exactly how my marriage had really been working. Holy shit, the first friend said after going through it all. She really was running everything past him first. Every major decision, every financial choice, every family plan. I put the papers back in the folder. Would either of you accept this in your marriages? They looked at each other. I mean, if it was just about the kids. It wasn't about the kids. Look at those emails again. She asked his opinion on what car we should buy. She discussed our vacation plans with him before mentioning them to me. She canceled our anniversary plans last year because he needed help moving furniture. When you put it like that, I'm not putting it like anything. I'm just showing you what actually happened. I sat back down. Now she wants to go to counseling to fix a problem she spent a year creating and 3 years enabling. Why would I waste time on that? Sunday brought the final attempt. She showed up at my parents' house during family dinner, looking like she hadn't slept in days. I need to talk to him, she told my mother at the door. I don't think that's a good idea, Mom replied, but she let her in anyway. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she walked in. Dad looked uncomfortable, Mom looked annoyed, and she looked desperate. I'll do whatever it takes, she said without sitting down. I'll block his number. I'll move us to another city. I'll sign a post-nuptial agreement giving up any claim to your assets. All of that sounds great. You should definitely do those things. For your next husband. Why are you being so cruel? I'm not being cruel. I'm being clear. You made a choice Sunday night, and it wasn't me. I stood up. You told everyone at that table that another man would always have priority access to you. That's not something you walk back with promises. It was a moment of stupidity. No, it was a moment of honesty. And honestly, I'm grateful for it. Because now I know exactly where I stood, and I don't have to wonder anymore. She looked around the table at my parents. Can't you talk to him? Make him see reason? My father cleared his throat. The only unreasonable thing here is what you said at that dinner. If you'd said that to me 40 years ago, I'd have walked out too. That broke her. Complete meltdown, sobbing, begging, the whole performance. But I just sat there drinking my coffee, watching someone realize that actions have consequences. I can't believe you're choosing your pride over our marriage. I'm not choosing pride over marriage. I'm choosing self-respect over whatever that arrangement was. I finished my coffee and stood up. You wanted me to deal with your ex having eternal access to you, or leave. I'm leaving, just like you suggested. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. You just didn't think I'd actually do it. When she finally left, my parents and I sat in silence for a few minutes. That was hard to watch, Mom said finally. Yeah, but necessary. She needed to understand that some things can't be fixed with tears and promises. Do you think she gets it now? She gets that she lost her safety net. Whether she understands why is a different question. I helped clear the dishes. But that's not my problem anymore. Monday morning, my attorney called with an update. Her lawyer wants to negotiate. She's willing to accept very generous terms if you'll consider reconciliation. Not interested. I figured, but I had to pass it along. She's also dropped all demands for spousal support and is asking for minimal asset division. Good. The faster this is over, the better. Should be finalized within 60 days. 60 days to officially end what had really been over for months. I could live with that. 8 weeks later, I was signing the final divorce decree in my attorney's office. Clean break, minimal fuss, exactly what I'd wanted from the beginning. Congratulations, he said, sliding the papers across his desk. You're officially a free man. How did she take the final terms? Not well. She tried one last time yesterday to get you to agree to mediation instead of finalizing. When I told her you weren't interested, she broke down completely. I wasn't surprised. Over the past 2 months, I'd heard through mutual friends that she'd been having a rough time. Word was that her public announcement at our anniversary dinner had become local gossip and not the sympathetic kind. What about her arrangement with the ex-husband? That's the interesting part. Apparently, when he found out about the divorce and the reason behind it, he started backing away from all the extra contact. Turns out having that much access to his ex-wife was causing problems in his current relationship too. I had to laugh at that. So her eternal access arrangement lasted about 6 weeks after I left? Something like that. His current wife finally put her foot down after hearing what happened at your anniversary dinner. Made him choose between appropriate co-parenting boundaries or marriage problems of his own. And he chose his current wife. Smart man. The irony wasn't lost on me. She destroyed our marriage to maintain unlimited access to her ex-husband and ended up losing both relationships in the process. I drove home to my new place, a small house I'd bought 3 towns over. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and more importantly, it was peaceful. No surprise phone calls, no schedule changes that required another man's approval, no walking on eggshells around someone else's complicated feelings. That evening, my dad called to check in. How do you feel? Relieved. Like I can finally breathe again. Any regrets? I thought about it for a moment. Just one. I regret not standing up for myself sooner. I spent 3 years trying to be understanding about an inappropriate situation. You were trying to make your marriage work. That's not something to regret. Maybe, but I was trying to make something work that was fundamentally broken from the start. I opened a beer and sat on my back porch. You can't build a healthy marriage when one person is emotionally invested in managing another relationship. What about the kids? I miss them, but honestly, it's better this way. They need to see what appropriate boundaries look like, not watch another man tolerate being second choice in his own house. A few weeks later, I ran into one of the other parents from their school at the grocery store. Hey, how are you holding up? Better than expected. How are things at the school? She looked uncomfortable. Well, it's been awkward. She and her ex-husband used to sit together at every event, but now he comes with his wife, and she sits alone. People have been talking. Talking about what? About what you said happened at your anniversary dinner. About how she basically chose him over you publicly. She shifted her shopping cart. Most people think you handled it exactly right. That's good to hear. His wife actually thanked one of the other moms for telling her what happened. Said it explained a lot about why she'd been feeling like the third wheel in her own marriage. I nodded. Sounds like everyone's figuring out where they actually stand now. Yeah, and honestly, she looks miserable. Like she finally realizes what she lost. I felt a moment of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. She'd made her choice in front of witnesses, doubled down on it for weeks afterward, and only started showing regret when the consequences became clear. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was dating again. Nothing serious, just getting back out there and remembering what it felt like to be someone's first choice instead of their backup plan. My attorney called one afternoon with an interesting update. Your ex-wife's attorney reached out. She wanted to know if you'd be interested in meeting for coffee to discuss, and I quote, clearing the air for the sake of closure. What did you tell him? I told him that ship sailed when she announced her priorities at your anniversary dinner. Some things don't need closure, they need distance. Exactly right. She apparently told her attorney that she's learned a lot about herself and wants to apologize. Good for her. She can apologize to her next relationship about not making the same mistakes twice. The truth was, I didn't need an apology. What happened at that anniversary dinner wasn't a mistake or a moment of poor judgment. It was the clearest communication we'd had in 3 years of marriage. She told everyone exactly where I ranked in her priorities, and I'd responded accordingly. Looking back now, I realized that Sunday night at Outback Steakhouse was actually a gift. Not a pleasant gift, but a necessary one. It forced me to stop making excuses for an unacceptable situation and start making decisions based on reality instead of hope. She'd given me a choice that night. Deal with her ex-husband having eternal access to her, or leave. I chose to leave, and it was the best decision I'd made in years. Some people stay in situations that don't serve them because they're afraid of the unknown. But sometimes the unknown is exactly what you need. Sometimes walking away from someone who doesn't value you properly is the only way to find someone who will. I never did get that anniversary dinner we were supposed to be celebrating, but I got something better. I got my self-respect back, and I got a clear understanding of what I would and wouldn't accept in my next relationship. And that was worth more than any anniversary dinner could ever be.